Few things we want to talk about here, mostly around working with projects, working with teams, and how we can integrate these two tools and really where the different connection points are. Um, it's going to depend upon how you're using these tools, but we'll go through some different scenarios and hopefully it'll make sense for what you're working with. And then we'll allocate some time at the end. We'll see how many people maybe join us, and we'll just do some Q&A, answer any questions that you guys have around some of the things that we're going to be covering. Is teams and project overview, and then really how we integrate them together, where the different connection points are, because you don't necessarily want your users having to jump around too much. And that's really the beauty of Teams, is that if you have all of the shortcuts and all of the channels set up and everything ready to go, for the most part, the team members shouldn't have to come out of that environment. They should be able to do everything within Teams, both as project managers and as team members. And that's really what we want to spend the most of our time on here, is talking about how we can integrate those different environments, and then just some tips that I can pass along as we look at this. So you want to think about Teams as really a platform. It's that hub that your users are going to come into depending upon what they're doing, right? So it is, for the most part, going to take over any kind of communication tools that we were using. It's replacing Skype completely, so there's not going to be a separate application when you want to just simply, jump and chat with somebody on your team and get in there and start working with them. It's your chat, and it's your phone, and it's your meeting hub as well. So when you're conducting meetings, instead of using, of course, what we're using here, GoToMeeting, we would typically be in Teams, and we're making our transition out of GoToMeeting probably the next few months ourselves. So it really solves all of those communication and collaboration, requirements that you have for your team. So it really is for everybody, and it's very tightly integrated into these other apps that you're working with, like Project and Planner. We're going to see how Planner and Teams also work together, and also how Planner hooks into Project. And so you're really going to see how all of these different kind of cogs are all working together within 365. And it's within the 365 ecosystem, right? Everything comes, from what's now Microsoft 365. They're losing the word Office, because it really encompasses more than just simply being, your hub for Office apps. It's everything. It's where you're storing all of your content. It's where you're setting up, as we mentioned, the calendars and the meetings and these conversations that you're having, and of course your reports through the BI portion of it. That's how you're going to get to your reports, is through Power BI, and it's going to be through 365. So Teams really becomes that center point, and it's going to fit in with Project, but in a unique way. And notice that Planner is here, but Project is not. So we don't see Project as one of these symbols here. It kind of lives outside of it. And so that's where the connection is. Planner is more integrated into Teams, and we'll see where that is and where PPM is really sitting outside. Now, this next generation of project that we're seeing, we just need to talk about, right? And we need to be aware of it, because it's what's next for project. And it's all based off of what they're calling the Power Platform. And so the Power Platform is, as the name implies, is it's a platform where these different apps and services are going to reside, like Project and Office 365. So when we think about Teams, Teams fits into that 365 area, and it has, of course, SharePoint and Outlook, all the apps that you're accustomed to working with. But you'll notice project sits over here, and they're calling it a new project service. So it's just simply going to be different than what we've been accustomed to, where project has essentially been running as a SharePoint site, and it's had very specific functionality for managing projects within that. But this new project service is built different, where we're able to take advantage of other services, and it's more open to receiving and sending data back and forth within the environment just at a very high level. And it's taking advantage of what you're seeing down here, this CDS, this common data service for apps. So at the end of the day, it's just a lot more capabilities that we get out of, this next generation of project and the 365 apps that we're going to see. So project for the web, as we know it, is going to be built in and is built right now. You can start taking advantage of it today. Project Online, of course, still exists and will exist for a period of time, but there's a movement that we're seeing, or a shift that we're seeing towards basically project being built on the Power Platform. And what that really means is it's built off of what you're seeing here, taking advantage of the CDS, which is a common data service essentially, so that you can manage your data more efficiently. All of this project information that you're storing, you want it to be in a data store that you can get access to very easily. And you want to be able to build on top of it. You want to be able to extend it to make it specific to how you want to be able to manage those projects. That's really the beauty of it being built in this Power Platform. So the tools that you use for your solution that you're building are going to be the ones that you're seeing here on the left, which is Power Apps, of course, and then Power Automate, which is essentially your workflow, how you flow the data through the system, and then reporting on it with Power BI. And you're still going to leverage Microsoft Project, of course, from a scheduling perspective, but that's that's your desktop tool for that, and we'll talk about that as we go through it. So where does Project Online fit in here? So Project Online is still with us. We're still going to leverage it, and it is still going to provide us with the project management solution that we're accustomed to using, today, where we can store our projects in a centralized location. We can get good resource management out of it by centralizing all of our resources in one place. We get time and task management. All of that, we still use it, right? We still leverage it. All that functionality is still there. But where does the connection come into play between what we're doing in Microsoft Project with either Project for the web, Project Online, right, or just even Project on the desktop, and how does that come into Team? Where does that connection point really happen, and how can we, if we're using these two tools, how can we use them together to make it more efficient for our team members? So when we talk about project today and we think about the project lineup, we want to be thinking about these three very specific plans that Microsoft has available for us, right? The first one is this project P1, which is, if you think about the term project for the web, that's really an umbrella term, but you'll often hear users refer to this P1 as project for the web, which is fine, but just know that what it really comes to and how we want to communicate this is what plan we're talking about. And so project for the web, P1, is this first level of project that we have available to us. And I'll demo this here in a minute so that we're clear on what we're talking about. And then the next one, of course, is the Project Plan 3, which is the Microsoft Project Desktop. And I don't want to go into too much detail on this because I've got multiple videos already out there on deep dives into the subscriptions, but just so that we're kind of overviewing it here on these different plans. And then, of course, Project Plan 5, which is, you can think of the enterprise plan, which you only need one of these, right? These are giving you enterprise features from a subscription perspective. So let's talk about how P1, if you're using project for the web, how this ties into Teams and where the connection point really comes into play. And we'll also just kind of get a high level overview of Teams as well. I'm going to switch screens here real quick. Let it just move this guy over. So what I have here is, and I'm dropped into a very specific section in my Teams. You should see that come over. Okay. So I'm logged into Teams, and I won't spend, as I mentioned, too much time on just kind of the fundamentals of the way Teams work. But let's just take a look really quick at some of these main areas: activity, chat, Teams, of course, calendar. You also have calls down here, and then you've got this little, more added apps based on what you have in here. So you could have multiple apps that integrate directly within Teams, and they would be available here on the left-hand side. For us, just as we're talking about project, it's all around the teams that we have created. And so often what you'll do is you will create a team based on project work that you're doing. And so if I scroll down here, you'll see that there's a construction PPM team that I've built. There's also a widget cloud team that I built. And this is the one that I'm really interested in here. And then, of course, there's some other teams, specifically even with some different logo changes and things like that, or icon changes based on what I'm looking at. Now, when I open up this widget cloud, whenever you create a new team, and notice that there's the link here to join or create the team, right? When I do create the team, it's of course going to give me the option to give it a name and then whether or not it's public or private. So some very general settings when I create that team. When I create the team, it's giving me this general channel for the most part that I'm going to leave as it is. We don't want to put too much content in our general. Just kind of leave it alone, leave it as the default, kind of like the landing page for your team. So this may be someplace where you have some announcements or some kind of general, maybe governing documents that you share here, but that should be it for the most part. What I also have are some additional channels that I've created just by simply clicking on my little ellipse here and then adding a particular channel. In this case, I added this widget cloud project channel, as you can see here, and it is going to look a lot like the general. It has the posts and the files, but it also has this project, widget project. So if I click on the widget project within Teams, you'll notice that it's looking for a particular project here that it's taking me directly to, simply called demo project. Okay, so I'm going to go back to general to show you where that got created and how that was created to show up here. So the first thing is I want to come back to Office 365. And so I'm just going to come here. Notice that I'm in 365 here. I'll even just go to Office so you can see the main page here. So I'm logged into Office 365. I have the P1 subscription, the project for the web, quote unquote, P1 subscription. That, when I have it, will give me this icon. Okay, it'll give me this app within 365. I'll click on it to go right into it, and notice the URL that it's taking me to, project.microsoft.com. So with the P1 license, I'm able to come in here and simply start to create new projects within here that I can share and I can have my users collaborate on, and of course that I can integrate directly into Teams, as we just saw. So I created a project earlier just simply called demo project, and I just came down here, clicked, right, and selected it. And so the drop down is either giving me the option of creating a new roadmap or creating a new blank project. And so that gave me this project. here. If I click on it to drop right into it, you'll notice that it takes me to within the project.microsoft.com just directly into where I can start editing this project. So the beauty of P1 and Project for the Web is that I'm doing all of my project management, all my task management, all my assignments right out of here. I have these three primary areas. You can think of them as views, areas, views, whatever makes the most sense to you, but they're called simply grid, board, and timeline. They look a lot like Planner. If you've worked with Planner at all, you'll notice it has a lot of the same kind of terminology around the way you're working with your tasks. So you would just simply come in here and start entering in the tasks that you want to work with. You'll notice there's things like an assignment column, a duration column. There's even the ability to come in here and work with buckets. When I'm working with these tasks and navigating to these areas, views, right, like grid and board and timeline, you can see that it's the same task information just presented in a different way. So when I'm in this board view, this is going to look more like when I'm doing sprints, right? And I want to be able to see things that I can drag and drop along, drag and drop in between these different sections as I'm working with them. So the boards and these different renamed, right? If I scroll over here, buckets are actually going to show up when I'm back in the grid as the bucket dropdown. So each of these are just simply coming from how they've been renamed within the board area. So some very easy to use yet very powerful capabilities that we're getting right here within the browser. So for the most part, when I want to bring over one of these projects into Teams, it's just a matter of bringing the URL over. Okay, so many users will go look for SharePoint and say, well, this is a SharePoint site, so I should be able to see this if I add the SharePoint app into Teams. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. You really need to just simply drag and drop the URL. So if I just go to grid here, notice that it's grabbing the project ID. It says task grid project ID. So just highlight that URL, just copy and paste it. Really all you're doing here. You're copying it. Then we can go back into Teams. So when I come in here to the widget project cloud, there's the link. So here's the channel to the widget project cloud. And then here's the actual project that I was just working on, which is right here. And so when I click on it, you'll see it come right in. And that's the exact same project that we're working with. So this got added by simply clicking on the tab to add the tab. It's then going to give me all of these different options. So when you see this, you know, sometimes we'll just go look for the, project for the web, and you don't see it here. So what are your other options? And then of course you're thinking, well, maybe it's SharePoint, but SharePoint won't accept that URL. It won't see it as a SharePoint URL, but it will see it as a website. So you can paste this into the website here, and of course give it the appropriate name. Okay. So this is the widget project for the web, widget 2 here, and save that guy. And so now your users, instead of, having to go to, the project URL, they just simply have it within here, and then it makes it a little bit easier for them to share and to really collaborate within this particular area. So a couple of the takeaways is to really stay away from doing anything in your general channel, kind of leave that alone. And then it's just a matter of creating the channel specific to the in this case, the project that you're working with, and then you're just adding it there as a URL. Now, the other scenarios that will potentially emerge is if you are not using the project for the web, and you're using Project Online, it's going to be a little bit different. So if I minimize Teams here, and we're going to go back to where we were just at, and so this is that landing page for project. So when users click on that link, this is what they're going to see. If you just have the P1 license, then this is where all of your projects are going to be managed. Okay, they're just simply they're going to be here. This is where you will share them. You just saw how you integrate them with Teams, of course, and that's pretty much it. When you move into managing projects with Microsoft Project and you want to start leveraging Project Online, then you will, once you get your subscription and it's associated to your ID, you will have this Project Online link here, which will take you to the Project Online site that you're working with. So if I click on Go to Project Online, you'll notice that it's taken me to a very specific URL. This one we're just simply calling this Quick Start, and this is the dedicated site that you'd be working with, this guy here. And so projects get created different. They're taking advantage of using Microsoft Project, but also using Project Online to basically share the projects very easily. You can also do resource management out of here. So this really takes it to the next level that the P1 license simply just doesn't have all of the same services and functionality that P3 and P5 provide you. Okay. So how does this integrate with Teams, right? Where does the Teams integration come in if we're using Project Online similar to this? Well, some of it will be based on how you are using Microsoft Project. Okay, that's going to be the big differentiator, is if you are having it so that the team members are only working with the project sites, for example, then that very likely will be what you will have them linked to. In other words, when you're working with these projects, for example, I'm going to scroll down here. So I'm going to simply click on this link here, and this is where your project managers and your resource managers, portfolio viewers, for example, executives, they would often work in here without needing a Microsoft project license, right? Same thing with the team members. Where the collaboration will happen will be down in the project site, will be in here. And this is where documents can be uploaded and those types of things that would happen out of this location. Well, this is the exact same way that you can bring the link over into Teams again. So if we go back into Teams, you'll see that I have a PWA project site, a PWA project site. And so if I click on PWA project site, you can see that there's a software upgrade link that has been created. I'll go ahead and click on that guy. And so for the most part, what has happened here is just adding a new tab, clicking on the plus, and looking for that website URL and just simply dropping it in there, get in there. So what you're really seeing here when it comes to Teams and Microsoft Project is that you're placing a lot of, right, basically just hyperlinks in order to get easy access, shortcuts for the most part from within Teams to get into project. What I'm going to show you is how you can use it even when it comes to things like your meetings and having your meetings down within your project sites. So you can get a little bit even more integration when it comes to, managing your team and working with your team. So when it comes to conducting meetings, Teams has a great way to handle that and to manage that, and it's through this calendars area or the calendar. And you can see that I had a widget meeting. We're right in the middle of our go-to webinar here, or our go-to meeting rather, and there was a widget meeting that occurred. So the real nice thing with this integration is that I can call upon the channel when I set up my meeting. Okay, so when I go to set my meeting up, as you can see here, there's this section called Add Channel. So before you started to actually conduct a lot of these meetings, you would more than likely have your channel set up. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. And this one, they're using a couple different things. In particular, they are using Planner. That's one of the things that they're working with, and they're using timesheets. Okay, so those are two things that they've turned on. So from a team member's perspective, when they're adding their very specific links here, they can go so far as to link all the way down to the timesheet, right? And so think about how whatever you want to expose to your team from the perspective of, just the view that you would want them to access, you just simply add it in here. So that's always one of those big adoption, kind of hurdles that we have to get over when it comes to deploying Project Online, and particularly timesheets, is that the complaint is, well, I don't want to have to go there. I don't want to have to actually launch another browser and go to the timesheet and fill it in. And now you're like, hey, it's right there. Now that I have this construction, right, PPM channel already established, so let's say this is the one that I wanted to connect that meeting to. If I go back into calendar, and let's say I'm going to set a new meeting, and there's my channel, and there's my construction PPM. Notice that I can place it anywhere. I can have this as a meeting specific to the construction main, or I can make it to the right above it, and that's the beauty of having those different channels. I'm going to say new meeting. And part of the reason why I want to show you this is they make it very easy for you to record these sessions. And I'm a huge advocate, as long as everybody's okay with it, particularly when we're gathering requirements and we're working with the customer, is that we just ask them, is it okay if we record this so that we can go back in and review it? People do that all the time, right? And so the Teams meeting functionality gives us the ability to record that very easily. And so when I send this out, notice it's looking for attendees, whether I'm going to repeat it, add a location, all the things that you typically expect from, and I have it set up at 2 o'clock. So there's that Teams meeting. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time for this guy to render up. Let me show you what that actually gave us at the end of it. So let's go back to this widget meeting. Right, there it is. It's associated with the widget cloud. It has all of the specific. This is the one that I had scheduled from earlier. And within the chat, because I told it to record, you'll notice it just simply drops the little widget meeting in there, and I can play the video right here within it and start watching. So this is using what's called Microsoft Stream. And so Stream is always available to you. It's just going to go and start to record. So notice I was just, and this was just a little bit earlier before the meeting, just so I could have a sample for you guys. And it's recording it. Isn't that cool? So you don't have to think about, let me go grab another app. So I make sure that I record before I get it up there. Just grab your meeting, boom, jump right into it. The other nice part of this as well is that you can then, of course, connect these meetings back to, or these invitations, right? And basically appointments that you're setting up, they can be tied back to your sites if required, right? The SharePoint sites that you're setting up. So all of that very, functional and tight integration there. Because I want to show you the Planner integration. Where does Planner come into play as it relates to Teams? Because when we're in Teams, we'll always see when we go to add apps, Planner keeps coming up. I said, well, there's a Planner app, but there's not a PWA app. How do I use these? How can I use these, together? So I'm in this construction PPM project, right? It's the one that we looked at earlier when we were in Teams. So as opposed to using the web for the majority of the project management, when we're using Project Online, which is what you're looking at here, it's allowing me to take advantage of Microsoft Project, Microsoft Project on the desktop. Okay. And so when we are using Project, what we can do within our schedules is that we have this command right here, which is simply called Planner. Okay, so remember that Planner is a 365 app. It's going to look like this within 365, right? So this is Planner. It has the Planner Hub, has these different, kind of reports or dashboards related to the different plans that you have. It has this My Tasks, and of course, it has the ability for you to create new plans. And so if you weren't using Microsoft Project, if you didn't have any project background, you didn't want to use any kind of desktop application, you said, I just want some way that I can schedule tasks, manage resources, manage my deliverables, my milestones, and have this way to communicate that. Well, Planner is a good way to do it. Well, you can use them both. You can use them in conjunction with each other because you have the Planner as an app here, which is very sophisticated, gives us a lot of good detailed information on our tasks, our assignments. And we know that there's a Teams app that brings in our Planner plan, right? And we're also seeing that Project has the ability for you to connect plans to it, okay, into your project schedules. So one way in which you can leverage all three of these different, apps, if you will, that you're working with, that being Project, Planner, and now Teams, is that you are putting the details, or you're allowing the details to be managed in Planner, but you are still managing the task here in Microsoft Project. For example, you have this task simply called mobile site plan. Okay, so this mobile site plan is 2 weeks, and it's tied to a Planner plan. Okay, now the way this was set up is that task was just simply selected and Planner was highlighted. So when I click on this link, and so it's dropping me into this mobilized site plan. So in Planner, a plan was created that's called mobilized site plan that we knew was going to be connected back to, right, the Microsoft Project schedule. So this is all of the details, the 2 weeks worth of details that's being managed in the Planner plan, okay? But in Microsoft Project, it's being seen as a 2-week task. But as a Planner plan, it's a number of smaller tasks that make up the 2 weeks that the users are going to be able to work with. So this is a great way that you can still have those details, communicate those details, and it's not a roll up here, but it's really a connection between the two, between the Planner plan and this task. You've created that connection, and that's really the key to all of this. And then, of course, that will be then able to, when you come back in here, to be tracked and updated. So just like we saw project.office, now we see tasks.office. It has that exact same site as I come down here. It's the same links. It has all the plan information, right? There's the mobilize site plan, and it's now here within Planner. So I can be in Microsoft Project, making that connection. As these tasks get updated, the updates are immediately happening on the other side. Now, again, they don't equate to them. It's just that it's not a roll up to the 2-week task that I manage in the project schedule. This is just simply saying, hey, I've got this connection between the two.
Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video, and don't forget to subscribe. If you're interested in receiving more posts about Project Online, the new project for the web, and Teams, and other cool tools and services. Talk to you guys soon.